Hello everyone, this is Peter here with PM Designs. This is a kind of a part 2 to a video I made before about making the flat eyelids which work with the Rigify rig, but now I'm going to add in an extra part which is the eyelids, which we can make sad or angry or whatever. Do whatever you want with it. So let's get on with it. So I've got my new file here. I'm just going to do some setup first. So I'm going to add in a couple of new collections. I'm going to call one of them Mesh, and another one's going to be called Controls, just to keep things efficient. And just to do this, I'm just going to use a cube, but this will work on whatever head shape you've got. Unfortunately, my screencast keys isn't working 100%. As you can see, I'm not pressing anything now, but it says the middle button is pressed. So I'm going to try to just explain everything that I'm doing. So now I'm just going to press GZ1 or GZ1, GY1, just because I want to get him lined up, get the head lined up with the 3D cursor here. Obviously, if you've already got your own head set up, you don't have to do everything that I'm doing, but this is just in case you haven't. I'm going to press F2 and call this head, and I'm just going to add a bevel modifier to make it look a little bit cuter. Just bring up those segments a bit and shade it smooth. First thing I'm going to do now is add a color to that, which I'm going to call skin. I'll pop into my material preview, and I'm going to make it like this kind of blue. Okay, I'm going to hide that for now. I'm going to press numpad 7 and add a circle. In edit mode, select all of that, press GX1. Actually, I'm going to press GX and move it a little bit further off. Turn on proportional editing with O, select one of those vertices, and just scroll my mouse wheel up a bit until I can get like a kind of cartoony eye shape. Press number 2, not number pad 2, number 2, edge select, press A for all, and press F to add a face. And now back in object mode, F2, and call this eyes, and I'm going to add a mirror modifier. So I've got two eyes, RX90 to rotate it like that, get the face, scale that down, and put those roughly where I want them. I'm going to bring it forward ever so slightly, just so it's not intersecting. Alright, something like that. Apply the scale, or apply all transforms actually, and do the same for the box, why not? Okay, so now, well, these eyes and heads should be in the mesh. Now in my controls, I'm going to add a whole load of empties, and I want them to be pretty precise where I place them, so I'm going to do it a certain way. First thing I do is apply my mirror modifier, and now I'm going to edit mode, press 3 to get face select, and select this eye, Shift S, cursor to selected, back into object mode with tab, Control A, add an empty, and I'm going to use a circle for this first one, which I'm going to size down to roughly the size that I want for the pupil. And then click back on the eyes, tab into edit mode, 1 for vertex select, I'm going to select this vertex, Shift S, cursor to selected, back in object mode, Shift A, add an empty, and I guess this has to be the plane axis one. And scale that down as well. And then back on the eyes, tab, edit mode, select the vertex, Shift S, cursor to selected, and now I'm just going to duplicate this one, Shift D, and press Shift S, selection to cursor. So now I've got two equally sized empties, one for the top eyelid, one for the bottom eyelid, and one for the pupil. For all of these, I'm just going to, well, I'll name them later. I'll name them now actually. Pupil.L, lid.T.L, lid.B.L. So for these three, all of these, I'm going to add a constraint, which is going to be a shrink wrap, and the target is going to be the eye. And then I'm going to come here and click copy to selected. So now all three of these have the same constraint. So that means if I just try and move this, it can't go beyond the eye area. It can go to the other eye, but that's not a big deal. As long as you have minimal control over your hands, it shouldn't be a big problem. So I'm going to do one eye first, and then I'll do the other one later. I've got these all set up. There are going to be more empties later. I'm going to do a kind of more advanced, some more advanced steps later, but if you just want the basic eyelid and pupil shader, this is the first part. Click on the eye, add a new material called eye.L, shading. Come down here, I'm going to hide my empties, or just going to hide them for now. Okay, and start off with my pupil. If you've seen my other video, you can kind of skip this bit, but I'm going to do it again anyway, just in case people haven't seen the first part. This is just about doing the pupil. I need a gradient texture, I need a color ramp, and I need mapping and texture coordinate nodes. Control and T to get those. If you don't have Node Wrangler, you should. Object to vector, select my pupil, and then I'm going to switch the color ramp to constant. I'm going to switch these over, and I'm going to plug in I need to switch this to spherical. I'll plug in the color from here, and then the color into the base color here, and I've got my pupil. So I can just, one thing I forgot to do, for the, let's just go back here, for the 3 empties, Control A, apply scale, only scale. So now, bring this back. Okay, I've got my pupil set up. That's it. That's the pupil done. It's that easy. The pupil moves when you move the empty. Going back to this, I want to add a little bit of glare to my eye. So first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to add a frame. I know there's a shortcut for this, but I always forget it. So I've got my frame, I clicked on it, press N, I've got the frame over here, label, I'm going to call it pupil black, and I'm going to stick all of these inside that frame, just to keep things a little bit easier to read. Now I can duplicate this lot, bring it up here, add a mix RGB. If you're using Blender 3.5, this will come up as only mix, no mix RGB, just mix, and it will be blue. And the first slot I think is called float. So you have to click on that float and change it to color, and it just becomes this, basically, a mix RGB node with all the same bells and whistles, all the same things you can choose from. And so I'm going to plug that one in down here. Now I need to switch these around because I want this to be the glare on the pupil. I want to make that pretty small. If you find that your color ramp can't make it small enough, you can always mess with the size down here, increase the size to make it smaller. I think something like that is okay. I'm going to set my mix to be an add factor up to 100% and click clamp. I won't click clamp, I'll show you why I click clamp in a minute. I just want to offset this slightly, maybe not that much, minus 0.05 and the Z minus 0.07. Yeah, something like that. Actually, I'm going to set it off a little bit more just to show you why I want to click add. If I go down here slightly, you can see that the whites are not the same. So if I click clamp, it becomes the same. Okay, and this black outline you can see is just the empty, so that's not a big deal. Okay, and again with the shrink, if you want to, with your shrink wrap here, you can offset it slightly so it's not actually touching the eye, but the way I'm going to do it, it doesn't matter. So that's my pupil done. I could also, if you want to, could add in another color here, which like blue, I don't know, and then just bring that down. So we've got like a blue iris. And also if you want to make kind of more cartoony eyes, you can stretch them, stretch it on the x-axis, so it's like that. If you want to do that kind of, it still works exactly the same. Yeah, I think I'm going to leave it like that for now, actually. It looks quite good. Okay, so that's the eye done, right? The pupil that moves and everything. So now we just want to make some space here because we need to start doing the eyelids. Again, it's basically the same as this. I'm going to add in a gradient texture, Control T to get the mapping and texture coordinate nodes. And I'm going to add in a color ramp, which I've got in my favorites, but you can search for it. And I'm going to add a shader. I'm going to add a diffuse shader, a diffuse BSDF, sorry, because I want to show you a potential mistake. Click back on my skin color here, click on the color, go to hex, Control C, click back on the eye, go to my little diffuse over here, click on the hex, Control V, paste that in there, so I've got the same color. Add a mix shader, plug that in down there, plug this guy in here. I can make this a little bit tighter probably, bring this over a bit. don't know if you know this, but if you've got like a few nodes selected, you press S, you can kind of scale them. You can press SY to flatten them out a bit. SY0 will just make them completely flat if you really are a perfectionist. Bring the color into the factor over here. No, sorry. Bring the color of the gradient into the color ramp, and then bring the color of the color ramp into the factor over here. We're going to switch this to constant. I'm going to leave this as black and white for now, just to show you. Oh, yeah. Okay, so now you can see there's a slight problem that my eyelid seems to be a different color to the skin, and it's obviously the obvious problem that the eyelid's going the wrong way. But so maybe you want this, so it's fine. If you don't want this, the reason is because my eyelid is a diffuse BSDF, but my skin is a principled BSDF. So I'm just going to make them the same. Yeah, I'm going to make my skin into a diffuse BSDF. And just connect that up there. So now it's flush, it's smooth, you can't even notice it. Going back to my eyes, so the eye's coming across that way, I just need to rotate it on the y-axis by 90 degrees. And I need to change from the object to be the vector, and I'm going to choose my lid top.l. So now if let's turn this back on, bring this guy down, eventually it comes down, and so to get it to match up nicely with your control, you just adjust the color ramp, or you can adjust the position here, which is going to be the X because we rotated it, something like that. And there we go. So I've got it to match quite nicely, and then I can just bring that up. So that's done. And as you can see, we can rotate it. If I just turn this off, make a sad eye, make an angry eye. That's all good. Yeah, pretty easy, pretty nice. So now all we have to do is repeat that process for the bottom eyelid. So I'm just going to frame this all up, Shift A, add a layout frame, stick all of these in there, and I'm going to label this one top lid. So it's something I want to do before I go on. I want to add in a color ramp over here, just to make it look a bit more interesting. So just search color ramp, plug that in there, and I'm going to steal the color from this blue, from here for both of them for now. Plug that into the color here, and I'm going to take the color from the gradient and put that in there. I'm just going to change one of these to be ever so slightly darker, or maybe a lot darker, and I'm just going to bring that down and get it so, yeah, about there. Yeah, because it's just a personal preference. You can set it onto ease actually, or you could have it on constant. But I just think that looks a bit more interesting to have that kind of outline there, and you can see where the eyelids are going to meet. So now, let me just put the eyelid back up there. Okay, and now let's do the second eyelid. Easy. Select all of this, duplicate, bring it up here, add another mix shader, plug it in here, bring this one down into that one, use this as the factor, use this color ramp as the factor, and now all we have to do, a couple of steps, just change this to bottom lid and switch this to -90, because it's got to be 180 different. Okay, so then we should have a bottom eyelid. And there you go. I think that is a pretty good look. And so when they're completely touching, you can still see roughly where they are. If you don't want that, you just don't do the color ramp step that I did. Okay, so that's that done. So now all we have to do is make the other eye, which is super easy. So I've already applied my mirror modifier. I'm going to go into edit mode. Let's add a new material. We call this I.R. I.R. Thank you. And copy this material, paste material to this slot, select this one, I.R, assign. So now I have to just go through and change the controls, but I don't have the other controls yet. So let's do it in layout mode. I'm going to select all of these, Shift D, Shift D, duplicate. So I'm going to rename them just to be B.R, T.R, lid T.R, and pupil.R. Okay, so now over here, edit mode, face select, Shift S, cursor to selected, pupil.R, selection to cursor. Okay, and vertex select, cursor to selected, top lid dot R, selection to cursor, vertex mode, cursor to selected, bottom lid dot R, selection to cursor. Go into the shading editor on the eye.r and just change all of these to be the right one, b.r. Lid top.r, pupil black. Oh, I didn't rename this one. I'm going to change this to pupil glare. Change this to pupil.r and change this one to pupil.r. And there we go. So that's it. That's the basic steps. Yeah, we've got eyelids which come down and can rotate, and you know, you do them individually. But okay, let's get a bit more advanced now. Yeah, we want to have more control with fewer controls, right? So first, let's start off. Let's start with some artistic direction. If you want to control where this glare is going to go, so I'm going to press the period button here, full stop, and choose individual origins. I'm going to duplicate my two pupil controls and size them down on individual origins to something like that, and Control A and apply the scale, and then I'm just going to move them both to be roughly where I want my glare to be. Then I just got to make sure they're named correctly and call it pupil glare .L and pupil glare.R. Right, and then go back into my shader, find my glare, and then just choose the right one. So this is I.R, so I just need pupil glare.R, and then left eye pupil glare.L. So now if I select both of those, because they are offset already, so going to my glare, where's my glare control? Oh, I didn't change this one either. Don't forget to change your labeling. Right, I'm going to just set these back to 0 on both of those. Okay, and so now I've got control. Oh, so if you wanted to, have control where the light is coming from, that's how you do that. And then just don't forget to parent those. Oops. Let's get rid of the mesh for now. Parent those to their relative pupil control. So now we've got the glare that follows. Okay, so let's get the eyes to move together first of all. So I'm just going to put my cursor here, and I'm going to add another empty, which is going to be a circle, and bring it forward slightly, size it down a little bit, and I'm just going to, just for my own personal preference, I'm going to scale it like that. First I should have applied the scale, but yeah, let's scale it like that. And now all we do is shift select both of these pupils, then shift select this one, and Control P object, and I'm going to call this one gaze master. So now when I move this, but they're still going to stay shrink wrapped to their relative area. Shrunk wrapped, shrinked, they're still going to stick to the eyes. Yeah, so now I can just control both eyes individually. Yeah, and obviously you just make sure you don't go too far with that. Okay, so now we want to be able to control the two eyelids. I want to be able to make them both go up and down at the same time, and both rotate in the correct way to be sad eyes or angry eyes. So I need to add another master. So I'm going to put my cursor here just because I want the master to be perfectly level with these, and I'm going to add an empty. It has to be a plane axis for this one, and I'm just going to scale it down a bit, apply that scale, bring it forward. Let's just line it up roughly with our eye control, scale it down a bit more. You have to scale it evenly. If you do decide you want it to be slightly flatter, this is a bit more, it will work, but it's a bit more tricky. So I've applied my scale. Let's just put the cursor to the world origin. So for this one, we can't just parent it like we did with the eyes, because, well, we can, but that will only move it up and down, or it will change the scale. We want to be able to rotate the eyes separately. If we want, the eyes to look sad, we want this left eye to rotate clockwise 45, or this one rotates anti-clockwise 45. So we can't just do a straightforward parent. So for this one, we need first of all, let's do copy location, which is going to be only z-axis on the master here. We're going to call that top lid master. Okay, so that works. Yeah, and then we're going to add another one, which is going to be transformation, which again is the top lid master as the target. Map from the way I'm going to do it is map from scale, and we're going to set we'll set all these to be minimums to be 0.5. I'll just copy this, paste, and the max to be 1.5. Copy, paste. Okay, so now, I didn't do the next part. So now we're going to do map 2, which is going to be what this does. We want it to be rotation, and only on the y-axis. So we set that to -45 as the minimum and 45 as the maximum. So now when I scale this, it's going to rotate, which if I bring back my eyes, I can bring this guy down, and I can make sad eyes or angry eyes. Yeah. So now what we have to do, let's get rid of this for now, is we first select our other empty, and then select this one which already has the constraints on it, and copy to selected. But yeah, they're both going the same way. Easy to fix. Go to the transformation on this one and just switch this rotation around. So 45 as the minimum to -45 as the maximum. So now when we scale this, we've got angry eyes or sad eyes. Yeah, bring it down. And we've got sad eyes if we make it bigger, or angry eyes if we make it smaller. Easy. Yeah? And that's it. That's the most complicated part about this is just doing that. We can also then just duplicate this, bring it down here and call it bottom lid master. Yeah, and then let's just make sure it's set level with these two. So cursor to selected, and then bottom lid master, selection to cursor, and then just bring that forward so it's, yeah, roughly in line. Doesn't matter too much. And then just do the same thing. So what I can do is select this one, select my top lid left, first select my bottom lid left, and then select my top lid left, and go copy to selected, but then just change this to bottom lid master, and this one to bottom lid master. So we've got the same thing going on with this one. Yeah, and then select this one, shift select, and we go copy to selected, and click on this bottom right and change that to bottom lid master and bottom lid master. So then we've got the bottom lid or the top lid. We can make them angry or sad, and we can control the eyes. Yeah, so now we can easily just hide these other ones, and we just keep these three controls active. And we've got the up and down, the sad and angry of both lids. Yeah, and can also control where the guy's looking. So yeah, if you found that useful, please drop a like. Thanks very much.